Thank you, Madam President. We would like to thank the Assistant Secretary General Khaled Yari for a detailed report describing the situation in the OPT in the context of the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2334. Unfortunately, as becomes clear from your statement and from the Secretary General's report we have in front of us, there has been no progress in implementing the resolution still. The situation in the OPT and the Middle East settlement process overall remains explosive. We have warned many times that the fact that one of the key long-standing conflicts in the Middle East remains unresolved, that this significantly impacts on the development in the regions and could result in a full-scale conflict, with the confrontation spreading to neighboring countries. Unfortunately, our calls and the calls of other countries who also were in favor of urgently intensifying collective efforts in this area were not heeded. The result of ignoring the Palestinian issues was the 12-day war that we have witnessed in front of our eyes, in which two nuclear states attacked a non-nuclear party to the NPT. Russian assessments of the aggressive actions by West Jerusalem and Washington were repeatedly several times in the Security Council here, and they remain valid. Madam President, today we would like to recall here that one of the main reasons which is blocking the restarting of the peace process between the Palestinians and Israelis remains a systematic policy by the Israeli authorities to widen their illegal presence on the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. As we can see in the most recent Secretary General's report, the level of violence by settlers, and this is done with the complicity and sometimes the co-involvement of Israeli security forces, is not going down. The settlement activity by Israel is going forth in leaps and bounds. Since March to June alone, plans were approved to build 10,000 additional housing units. In May, the Ministry of Defense of Israel green-lighted the legalization of 22 new settlement blocks. At the same time, the leadership of the Ministry of Defense is not even hiding the fact that these steps are strategically important for them from the viewpoint on preventing the creation of Palestinian state. At the same time, the practice of demolishing and confiscating Palestinian homes on the West Bank continues. According to the UN data, in the last 3 months alone, there were more than 500 such cases. We are astounded by the fact of numerous international law violations, but also by the cynical and humiliating methods that Israel uses. Frequently, the Palestinians have to demolish their own homes with their own hands, and they have to pay the astronomical bills for the service of destroying their homes. The systematic stance to have a creeping expansion through broadening the control of Israel of the West Bank is accompanied by provocative calls by the leadership of the Israel to fully cleanse Gaza and have the Israeli settlements return there. In this context, we share the assessments by Antonio Guterres when he says that such an ethnic cleansing is unacceptable. And we share the calls to Israel to reject the forced displacement of Palestinians and to immediately end the illegal presence throughout OPT. Madam President, once again, we have to state that Israel is acting without any regard to the catastrophic humanitarian consequences for the ordinary Palestinians. A good example of that is what is happening in Gaza. There, for almost 3 months, they received no humanitarian assistance while the hostilities continued. The number of victims and the scope of destruction as a resulting from the Israeli military operation is shocking. About 55,000 Palestinians died, about 125,000 wounded, out of them 50,000 are children. The civilian infrastructure in the Strip is basically all destroyed. 80% of their territory is declared to be a no-go area by the Israelis. 470 humanitarians were killed, including more than 320 UN staff. The attack of Hamas on the 7th of October 2023, which we condemned from the very beginning, can in no way serve as justification for the cruel and disproportionate actions by the Israeli leadership against the peaceful Gazans. Unfortunately, we can't expect that the day will soon come when we will stop being horrified when we read the daily OCHA information about the new victims of Israeli operations in Gaza. Immediately after the news that there was a ceasefire agreement with Iran, the General Staff of the IDF stated that they had plans to concentrate on the hostilities in the Strip. The same goals are being voiced there that we heard more than 600 days ago, including the release of hostages. And this is while we all understand that the return of the Israeli hostages can only be done when there is an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. It's only after that that it will be possible to stabilize the situation in the Strip. I would like to recall in this context here that such ways of conducting hostilities as using famine as a weapon of war, forced displacement of people, and total blockade can be qualified as crimes of war and crimes against humanity with accompanying legal proceedings and prosecutions. Colleagues, it's no secret that the key factor which ensures that Israel has a free hand in Gaza is a position taken by Washington. The United States not only provide the Israelis with an international cover when they block any Security Council draft resolutions when there is even a hint of criticism of the Israeli authorities, but they also continue pumping their ally in the Middle East with new weaponry and military equipment. According to the information we have, during the 600 days in Israel, Israel received 800 aircraft, 140 ships with 900,000 tons of military cargo. No comments needed here. Madam President, in conclusion, I would like to underscore and say that against the background of a broadened in the OPT and particularly in Gaza tragedy, there are greater expectations for decisive steps on behalf of the UN international community as a whole to recognize Palestine and to also protect specialized humanitarian agencies, UNRWA first and foremost. In this regard, there are great hopes which are being pinned on the international high-level conference in support of the two-state solution in New York, which was to be organized in June and which is provided for in two GA resolutions. We expect that the Saudi Arabian and the French co-chairs will decide and announce the new date of the forum, and the Secretary General will provide all the support needed to prepare and organize this conference. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement, and I give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. I thank ASG Chiari for his briefing. At present, the Middle East is mired in serious turmoil. Just after Israel and Iran reached a fragile ceasefire, Israel launched an attack on southern Lebanon, resulting in casualties. Meanwhile, the suffering of the Palestinian people continues to intensify. In Gaza, the humanitarian catastrophe has long defied description. Just since the resumption of the Israeli military offensive on March the 18th, over 6,000 people have died, and 80% of the territory has been put under emergency evacuation orders. As a result of the prolonged and extreme blockade and siege, more than 2 million people are facing severe food shortages. A large-scale famine is looming. In the West Bank, Israel has advanced or approved over 9,000 illegal settlement housing units and demolished over 400 Palestinian structures in the past 3 months alone. The operations of the Israeli security forces have resulted in the death of over 40 Palestinians and the injury of over 1,000 people. The tragedy of the Palestinian people has shaken international equity and justice and is a test of the human morality and conscience. The international community must not allow such suffering to continue and must take urgent actions. We strongly urge the full restoration of humanitarian access. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza has been extremely critical. The Secretary General's report states that The militarized aid distribution mechanism promoted by the U.S. and Israel violates the principles of impartiality, independence, and neutrality, and is not sufficient to alleviate the humanitarian situation, but rather poses additional dangers to the civilians. The Israeli military opened fire at civilians as they tried to approach distribution points, leading to the death of over 500 people and injury of over 4,000 people. Seeking food must never mean seeking death. China firmly opposes the weaponization of humanitarian assistance, strongly condemns attacks on civilians, and calls for a serious and full investigation and accountability. Israel must fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law as the occupying power by immediately lifting its blockade of Gaza, fully restoring humanitarian access, and supporting and cooperating with the UN and other humanitarian organizations in their work. We strongly call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Gaza. Military means cannot achieve lasting peace. The continuing of the war will only lead to more casualties. Ceasefire negotiations and a political solution are the right way forward. We urge Israel to immediately stop all military operations in Gaza. Countries with significant influence on the parties concerned should act in an impartial and responsible manner and take practical actions to promote a ceasefire. We strongly oppose unilateral actions that violate international law. International law and Security Council resolutions, such as Resolution 2334, set out the fundamental guidance for resolving the Palestinian question. Israel has continued to advance its settlement policy in the West Bank, resumed the land registration Area C, demolished Palestinian homes, condoned settler violence, and expanded its military operations. Such actions violate international law and Council resolutions and erode the foundation of an independent Palestinian state. We call on Israel to cease its attacks and settlement activities in the West Bank, curb settler violence, and lift restrictions on Palestinian banks. We strongly call for the revitalization of the two-state solution. The Palestinian question is at the core of the Middle East issue. The implementation of the two-state solution is the only viable path to resolving the Palestinian question. The international community should strengthen unity and jointly provide support and guarantee to advance the political process of the two-state solution. I firmly oppose the forced transfer of Palestinians and the dangerous attempts to annex Gaza and the West Bank. We look forward to the early resumption of the high-level conference on the implementation of the two-state solution. China will continue to work with the international community to make unremitting efforts to put an end to the fighting in Gaza, ease the humanitarian catastrophe, implement the two-state solution, realize a comprehensive, just, and lasting settlement of the Palestinian question. Thank you, President.